Hey everyone, this is the SEO follow-up. So if you saw my earlier video, I gave a behind-the-scenes look at how I go about this process. So let's begin. So this is just a summary slide of myself. You can pause it if you would like. So the 5 main areas that are gone over within this report are technical audit, which is what I'm doing, technical fixes to implement, keyword comparator research. So I look to see what SEMrush says, who your competitors might be, the content, opportunities, and some links, and just basically words you should implement onto your site. And finally, we always review the results. So at a high level, this site ranks for 195 keywords that drive 48 visits to it each month from Google. And out of that 48 visits, only 8 come from non-brand keywords, so keywords that don't include the word BART. So I gave an example of what some of these non-brand keywords look like. So just for some context, the position column, so if you're, let's say, position 17, I'm looking at remodeling Chicago, that means you're on page 2 of Google. There's about 590 searches each month for that phrase, so maybe getting there onto page 1 can drive additional traffic to your site. Just again, high-level view of the ranking keywords. Now, I think what's important is to break it down by page. So again, if they drive 48 visits, give or take, per month from Google, most are actually coming to that homepage. You can see at the very top, 93%, or actually if you want to round up, it's 94%. And that might be okay for some businesses, but if you have specific sections on your site, which they do, they have very specific services like their basement, you want to drive people there specifically when they do a Google search for, basement remodeling, for example. Okay, so the technical SEO audit. I use SEMrush to crawl every website. I get a baseline report. Now there's a lot of numbers here, and they're not that important to know like what each one means, because if you see 3,000 plus warnings, you might freak out. A lot of those things are actually just based off like JavaScript that it will be on every single page, so it gets amplified. So if you have 500 pages on your site, that could be 500 errors right there within a JavaScript, and usually the JavaScript error might just be that it needs to be compressed. So don't worry too much about that, but I do this as a baseline report because for my clients, I share this, that I'm already tracking your results. So if you go, you start reducing your errors as we go along the process, it's kind of that baseline report. I think a lot of clients like to look at that, especially if they have to share what someone is doing for their website. Again, so some of these errors that came up, there were some broken internal images that were linked, duplicated title tags, the things that I also kind of mentioned too. If you have JavaScript and CSS files combined, unminified, that's what's going to create that 3,000 plus number. What's really most important, I would say, out of this entire list is things like if the page doesn't have an H1 tag, so I'm looking at the warning section at the very bottom, or the sitemap's not included in the robots text. That's actually what I would focus on first. You don't need to work on everything all together. You got to really focus on the areas of your site that you want to improve to drive traffic. Competitor research. Snapshot from SEMrush. I put in BART remodeling, and this came up as some of the top competitors. So the way I use this is just, again, another baseline report. So if I can find similar websites to yours for the similar keywords, that's a great way to do that keyword gap analysis to find new opportunities to optimize for, maybe that they are and they're not doing a great job. You can potentially leapfrog them within the results. Here's a tool on the right hand side. It's called ClearScope, and this tool is pretty powerful. The way it works is you put in the specific keyword you want to rank for. So general contractor Chicago, it has over 1,000 searches each month, and they are very, very far away from page 1. They're at position 93. So they have a C+ score with this, which means that the words that are highlighted should be on their page. But there's also a plethora of words that are not highlighted, which I included down at the bottom just as an example. So general contracting, drywall, new construction, home builder, etc. These are words that are associated to the phrase general contractor Chicago. So if you include those words within your content, you can actually improve your score. Of course, you have to copy the new content into your CMS, but you can write your content first within ClearScope and get that baseline score that you need. And the highest score you can get is an A++, to put it in perspective. Same thing, basement remodeling. So I took one of their main services and I broke it down. They're on page, they're position 31 right now for this term. And really what I did here was the same exercise. Words that they can use on this page include home remodeling, a home theater, high quality, even a word like man cave or basement ceiling, etc. There's a lot of other phrases that they can use to give Google and even other search engines too more clues. Think of Wikipedia, for example. They rank for so many keywords because when you land on a page about, let's say like a baseball stadium, they're going to go over the history, who built it, how much it cost, if there's any like issues with like the construction company like during that time, and then some of like the firsts of the stadium. And you might have done a search for Fenway Park, but now you're learning about the entire history of the ballpark and where it got its name, etc. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here, where we're trying to encompass the entire topic and make sure those words are on the page because they make sense in Google's mind. And also from a user too, because everyone can search in a slightly different way. Now again, using SEMrush, I know that they're a local business. They're out in the Chicago area, so I put in their zip code, their address, etc. And this spit out this report of places that could make sense for them to be featured on. So things like Apple or Alexa. Now, Bing said that they were present. I did a few incognito searches with a few different browsers. I used Edge, Firefox, and Chrome. I didn't see their knowledge box show up. So actually, I report that on the next slide. But things like Facebook too might have like a slightly different name. You can see how it's highlighted in that orange. So it's really important from a local standpoint that you have the same name across any local listing site. You want to make sure that that's consistent. It's going to help with your local ranks. So I gave that screenshot again. I used a few different browsers and I was not able to replicate that knowledge graph that Google can present when you search their name. Now I know it's easy to knock on Bing and say who even uses this service, but Bing's audience is an older, more affluent type of audience compared to Google. And when you think of people who are looking for home remodeling or basement upgrades, etc., those are people who have a little bit more disposable income, and that's typically where Bing's audience might be as well. They're really high in the financial services and auto repair, etc. So, it would just make sense just to check on your Bing business page, just make sure that it's bringing in the data at least from Google, and just make sure it's verified because it should show up when you do a search just like that in Google. In conclusion, so a couple things. For any client that I take on, I recommend the same thing. So make sure your Google Analytics, Search Console, Bing Webmaster Tools, etc. are all on the site. The reason why I put this in here is that I actually never request this during the free audit. So I'm assuming they have these things, but it's important just to make sure. You would actually be very surprised people who don't have Search Console and definitely not Bing Webmaster Tools. Most people have GA, but and when I say GA, that means Google Analytics. But and the other thing too is SEMrush. So that's my tool that I use. I create a profile for every single client so I can track their results, keyword rankings, audits, etc. Top right, so just some technical things. XML sitemaps needed on the site. There's some broken links we got to fix. Going to the middle row on the typewriter icon. So again, some keywords that can be added to target pages that can help also create some internal links, etc. On the right, I mentioned Bing. It'd be a great opportunity just to verify that your listing's correct. Bottom left, so word together. So even though I can tell you words to add to your site, you ultimately have to be the decider. They have to make sense for your business. It's very critical. And then finally, on the bottom right, review competitors, discover low-hanging fruit ideas. So this could be just new content, this could be new pages, new services, etc. It's actually quite interesting when you look at your competitors and you see what they're doing. You can always find gaps in their strategy. Real quick, just some case studies. So here's taken from Ahrefs. I blanked out the site's name, but the site has grown from 0 traffic to 77,000 per month. This was a site that finished the year up 35% in session organic traffic. This was for a client. This is one of my pet projects, the stadium reviews. So this is just a snapshot of how the traffic was growing. Obviously, with what's happening right now with everything in the world, no one's really searching for sports in general, so there's no point to really put that traffic up there. But there's some snapshots, though, of the keywords that are ranking for the site. Another redacted for a client. This is from SEMrush, is showing their traffic increase. And then finally, this is just a PPC case study, so just taking, lowering the cost per click and then also lowering the cost per acquisition, driving more conversions for this particular client. So that's the report. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.